Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Kyriakides. I'm the Handbell director at Aurora United Church. I'm the area central rep for OGEHR. I play in the Bronze Foundation, and I'm the secretary for the newly formed Handbell Musicians of Canada. So today, or tonight, we're going to talk about rehearsal techniques for conductors. So I'm just going to flip to my PowerPoint presentation. So let's talk about how to plan and run amazing rehearsals. All of us have very limited rehearsal time, so we want to use that time wisely and efficiently so that we can have the best performances possible. So I've come up with what I refer to as the 5 B's. Be prepared, be organized, be efficient, be empowering, and be creative. So let's look at those each individually. The first one, of course, is to be prepared. You need to understand and be familiar with all music notation and bell notation. That's a given. You need to choose your music for larger chunks of time so that you're looking at the larger picture. So what I mean by that is instead of choosing the piece that you're going to play at the end of the month, playing that piece, and then choosing the next piece you're going to play at the end of the next month, choose all your music for, let's say, a term or 4 or 5 months at a time. That way you can have the larger picture. Are you having a variety in your music? And we're going to talk about this a bit later. Know your music. So once you've chosen it, study your scores. Study them for all sorts of things we're going to talk about in this presentation, and really know your music so when you come to rehearsal, you are already an expert on this music. Something I suggest you do is to quiz your ringers in advance to see what date conflicts they may have, and then give out a performance and repertoire schedule for the term as early as possible. So what I do is in August, I would send out an email asking my ringers to tell me if they have any date conflicts for Sundays, of course, because we're a church, from September to December. And then I try to work within those conflicts to make sure that I'm not booking a performance on one of those conflict dates. Now, sometimes that's not entirely possible, but I try my hardest. So that helps limit the number of people who come to me and say they can't be at a performance. And then when we go to the first rehearsal in September, I hand out the performance schedule for the entire term, including the list of repertoire for each performance. So I give them a digital copy and a hard copy, tell them to put it on their fridge. And what I find happens is that means I'm kind of booking them first for things. So they make sure that those dates are in their calendars, and there is much, much less conflict for dates when I do that. You should distribute, with permission of course, a list of ringers' names, emails, and phone numbers to all your ringers. Again, I send this digitally to them, but I also give them a hard copy, and this allows them to be able to contact each other, which is really important. Don't try to do this all alone. Have someone or someones to help you. Someone who could be your librarian, who can put your music in binders and take it out and file it and make sure everybody has copies. Somebody to help you with the social events. Somebody to help you with the pastoral care. Or maybe just one person to do all that, but you need a helper. And have supplies ready and available. Pencils, erasers, page turners, binders, etc. So for our groups, my wonderful helper, Pat, has a pencil case in the front of every binder, and in that has pencils, erasers, page turners, all sorts of things that we need during rehearsal. So that means there's nobody is ever going, I don't have a pencil, I can't erase this. Everything is ready for them, prepared. Okay. Next thing is to be organized. So plan your rehearsal time in advance. Never walk into rehearsal unprepared if you can avoid it. Look at your music. Look at when your next performance date is. What do you need to do in order to be successful for that? You've got 2 or 3 pieces on the go. How are you going to use each one of those pieces in the rehearsal? Plan, plan, plan. Have a system in place for setting up all your equipment and putting it all away. This should be outside of the parameters of your rehearsal time. So if your rehearsal's from 6 to 7, your setup of your equipment should not be from 6 to 6:10. It should be from, let's say, 5:45 till 6. If your rehearsal's from 6 to 7, you should be ringing and rehearsing from 6 to 7. And setting up and putting away of the equipment should happen outside that time. Set up a system for ringer absences. The bane of all conductors is absences. So again, if you give out the schedule in advance and people know when performances are, there will be less absences, but absences happen. That's just life. So if you provide your ringers with a list of substitutes that they can call on and make it their responsibility to find someone, unless it's a last minute emergency, this will be very helpful. We're really lucky at Aurora United because we have 2 groups, which means one group can call on the other. However, if you don't have that situation, what I do still is that if any of the ringers leave the group, I ask them if they wouldn't mind being on a substitute ringer list that just can come in for a rehearsal or 2 if need be. And most of them agree to do that. So then I distribute their names, emails, and phone numbers, and people can use that to find a substitute. Again, you want to make it the ringer's responsibility. If they know they're going to be away, it's their responsibility to find a substitute. However, if on the day of your rehearsal at 2 in the afternoon, somebody suddenly feels very sick with the flu, just have them contact you and then see if you can find somebody. So I would do that for an emergency, but for a planned absence, I make it the ringer's responsibility. When you're looking at your music, find similarities within a piece. So for example, if your music is organized A, B, A, you see the similarities in the A section. Therefore, when you rehearse that section, let's say the first A section with your ringers, then you can show them that once you've accomplished that if you flip, say, to page 6 and you have the return of the A section, that it's the same. And therefore, you're being efficient and organized in how you're rehearsing because you're using one section to kind of cover 2. Something I really recommend is if you've done your schedule for a term, say, and you know that it's at the end of November, you have to play a certain piece, but it's September. Somewhere in September, have the ringers simply sight read through that piece. And then take note of how well they did that and how well they coped. As conductors, we always have to anticipate how much work we're going to need to get a piece up to performance level. And we get pretty good at it, but still the ringers can surprise us. So sometimes we think they're going to really struggle with a piece and they really find it much easier than we anticipated. Or the opposite, we think this piece is pretty easy, shouldn't take very long, and they have struggles we did not anticipate. So if you have them sight read the piece early in the term, then as you're doing your rehearsal planning as the term goes on, you have a better idea of how much time you're going to need for that piece. All right, our next B, be efficient. I cannot stress this one enough, so I've put a nice exclamation mark at the end. Start and end your rehearsals on time. Okay? Your time is valuable and your ringer's time is valuable as well. If your rehearsal's from 6 to 7, do not start your rehearsal at 6:05 or 6:10 every week. You're losing rehearsal time, and your ringers will learn quite fast that it's okay if they're not on time at 6 o'clock because rehearsal will not be starting at 6 o'clock. It'll start at 6:05, 6:10. They can walk in anytime they want. Start at 6. Even if only 2/3 of your ringers are there, start. And the others will know that they simply have to walk in quietly and start ringing as soon as possible. End on time as well. Respect their time. So if rehearsal's over at 7, don't go till 7:15. Sometimes if I think that I might run over by 5 minutes because we're close to a performance and we really want to read through this piece again, I will say to the ringers, look, rehearsal's over. However, I would like to run this piece one more time. If anybody needs to leave, please do so. And don't feel bad about that. Just go if you need to. And I say, we need just 5 more minutes. So I'm basically kind of giving them permission to leave and asking their permission to end rehearsal a little bit later. Be very respectful of start and end times. If you do it, they will do it. Here's another one with exclamation marks. More ringing and less talking. Conductors too. We want to lessen the amount of time our ringers are chit-chatting with each other about things that have nothing to do with bells. But also, conductors need to talk a lot less. We are all guilty of going on and on and on about something when we could really have said it much more succinctly and then have them ring. So don't take 5 minutes to describe something. Be very much more succinct, fewer words, more ringing. Find difficult sections and passages in your music and isolate them and rehearse them. So, for example, if there's a page turn that's really tricky and it's giving your ringers a lot of trouble, then isolate it, rehearse it, the 4 bars before, a couple bars after the page turn, go over and over and again. People can talk about how they can be successful doing that. Do they need to turn early, turn late? Do they need to write themselves notes? What do they need to do? But rehearse those little tiny sections to help. And again, rehearse music in sections. Don't always start at the beginning. I see this all the time in conductors. Open up the piece, start at bar 1, ring until it falls apart, work on that, go back to the beginning, start again, ring until it falls apart, go back to the beginning. You get the idea. Don't do that. Don't always start at the beginning. Sometimes start at the beginning, but not always. Sometimes I start a piece on the last page. I do the last 8 bars because they're difficult. Or I do the chime section only. Or I do the B section only. So sometimes when I actually start from the beginners, my ringers know it's a big deal because we don't always start at the beginning. Have variety. So that's my next point. Use a variety of approaches for each piece during rehearsals. So some pieces you may need to ring from beginning to end because you're coming up to performance time. Some you may just need to work on a page turn. Some you may need to work on a difficult passage. Some you may need to work on shifting from bells to chimes. Get the ending right, all sorts of things. So don't do the same thing for every piece. Incorporate dynamics and other musical techniques early in the process, in the learning process. So I know that the ringers can be overwhelmed with learning the notes and the rhythms, but they need to be aware of dynamics and ritardandos and accelerando very early in the process. They will learn to incorporate those. It's much harder to incorporate them later on in the process. We need to do it earlier, and this will save you a lot of time. And practice the looking up at the conductor during rehearsals. So once your ringers are comfortable enough with a piece of music that they feel they can look up, you need to practice that. So you need to say, okay, you need to look up twice in every page and have them practice that because they won't just magically do it at a performance unless you have rehearsed it. Be empowering. This is not just a group of ringers. This is a group of human beings, and we need to empower them to be better musicians and to bond your group together. So, a couple of suggestions. Encourage questions. All questions are valid and they can be learning tools. If someone asks a question, more than likely somebody else has the same question. And then there's group problem solving. Sometimes somebody asks a question. You don't always have to be the one who answers it. Sometimes there's another member of the group who can solve a problem. Say somebody says, oh, in this bar I can't possibly play my C sharp 5. What can I do here? Well, somebody else might have a suggestion. Choose good quality and interesting music. This will empower people to want to play. And I'm just going to have a little plug here. I'm doing a tutorial, another OGEHR tutorial on March the 14th at 7 p.m. 2021, talking about how to choose good quality and interesting music for your ringers. So you'll want to see if you can attend that session. Give your ringers time to mark a new piece of music. So I've done 2 tutorials already on this, how to mark your score efficiently and getting started with a new piece of music. So give your ringers 10-15 minutes at the beginning of when you hand out a piece of music, or let them take the music home to do it, and let them mark their score and really analyze their score before they have to play. That means when they actually have to sight read and play it for the first time, they will be so much better prepared and they will be so much more successful and therefore be more empowered as a ringer. Show appreciation for your ringers. Thank them for their time. Send encouraging emails. Let them know what they're doing right. We spend a lot of time in rehearsals talking about what's not right, what's going wrong. page turns aren't going right, this note isn't right, this rhythm isn't right, this bell is wrong, you're holding the bell wrong. And that's the nature of making music, of course, but we also need to tell our ringers when they're doing it right, and we need to encourage them. Have some social activities outside of rehearsal. It's extremely important to have your groups bond together. I firmly believe as a conductor that if your ringers are bonding socially and emotionally, they will ring better as an ensemble. I 100% believe in that. So maybe have a Christmas party or an end of year party or just some activity that you can organize that people can go to. Doesn't have to be big. Play some games together, do something. In this day and age, of course, have a Zoom call together or something. This bonds people together with laughter and jokes and things, and I really believe it makes them ring better together. There's also pastoral care of ringers. I mean, ringers are human beings and they have issues that are happening in their lives. And so part of a group is to support its members. And that is true, of course, of musicians. For example, we have a Hearts and Flowers fund, and everybody gives $5 at the beginning of the year or the beginning of the term. And we use that money to send cards and flowers and food and sometimes like a little Easter gift or something. And we've had ringers who have had tragedies or difficult medical diagnoses or wonderful things happen, like grandchildren being born or weddings, and we try to support those things. Make sure your ringers are well prepared for each performance. So when you get close to a performance date, now this is where I need you to practice your music from beginning to end, no stopping, mistakes and all. They need to learn how to deal with mistakes in real time, because when the performance comes, there will be no chance to stop and fix an error. The better prepared they are, the more confident they are, the better it will be, your performance. And last, I would encourage you and your ringers to seek professional development. Go to workshops, attend tutorials, look at YouTube videos, go to conferences, join the Handbell Musicians of Canada. Do anything where you can talk about and learn about bells, you and your ringers. This will make you better ringers, better director, and better musicians all around. And the last B is be creative. So have lots of variety in your rehearsals. We've talked about that a little bit. How you approach each piece of music, how you choose your music. Is there variety in your musical choices? Isolate tricky sections in your repertoire and create warm-ups. So create your own warm-ups to help. So maybe you're going to a rehearsal and you realize that there's one tricky rhythm that your group is really struggling with every time you rehearse a piece. Well, instead of looking at it in the piece right away, create a warm-up that includes that rhythm. No music in front of them, just clap the rhythm, they clap it back, or something like tap their bells, or use a mallet on the table or something. Have them go over and over and over again in a warm-up. Never mind about reading the music or anything, just the warm-up. And then you go to the piece of music and, oh, that's that same rhythm we were just doing. Oh yeah, I can do that now. And that will make it much easier when it comes time to read it. Encourage position swapping. So even if it's just for fun, and actually probably mostly if it's just for fun, if there's no stress about an upcoming performance and having to play in a position that you don't normally play in, people will be much more willing to swap. So take a very easy piece from your repertoire, maybe something you played a while ago when your ringers were not at the level they're at now, and have them swap positions and just ring it for fun. No stress about performance. This will create empathy and understanding between your ringers as to, let's say I'm a treble ringer and then I sight read in the bass clef. Oh, wow, these bells are really heavy, and oh, they take longer to get the sound to ring, and oh, I've got to have I've got to do all sorts of things in order to make this happen. Or I'm a bass clef ringer and I'm reading in the treble clef, or let's say maybe I'm reading in the battery. Oh, wow, the battery is really busy, and sometimes I'm melody and sometimes I'm harmony, and these are all the issues. This will create empathy and understanding in your group, so try it every once in a while. And always look for new approaches to conducting and directing. So watch other conductors. go to tutorials, YouTube videos, read about conducting and directing. Just always be learning and trying to look at new approaches, and videotape yourself sometimes and look at yourself conducting. Maybe even have somebody else look at your conducting and give you some pointers. All right, so those are the 5 B's of having efficient and great rehearsals. And so I'm hoping that you will follow this tutorial by attending the Q&A session, and we can have a discussion, answer any more of your questions, and talk about running great rehearsals. Take care.